Use the 3 M's: mindfulness, meditation, manifestation.
Bingo, bango, bongo. We are back. Welcome to episode whatever of the Open Source. Tom and I are joined today by Michael Love, and we're going to be talking about health and wellness. Welcome, Michael.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us. We before we get going, obviously we always start the show with a little extract of our readings.
So this week we've got an article that is discussing mental health, which is a really important topic for all of us. And I think it's one of those topics that sometimes gets a little bit buried. We take a look here at how pop stars are talking about their mental health. And I think, firstly, it's great to see that people who are in the limelight do start that conversation and bring it to the forefront of everybody's mind. In this instance, it talks about Arlo Parks and that she's managed to de-stress during her experience. But I think it's also important that everybody talks about this. And so today, we're hopefully going to dive into the topic of this a little bit more.
Michael, welcome to this show. I've heard about you and your group, and also really want to understand your journey, what you're all about. And I think we're going to be on a bit of a voyage of discovery on this one.
It is a tricky topic to get into, and especially with men. It's even more profound with men to not open up and talk about their feelings. The main focus of what I like to do with mental health is stop it in its tracks before it escalates, really. So my story is that I'd always suffered with kind of mental health or mental illnesses. Never really suffered with it like kind of chronically. It was just very acute conditions of it here and there, where I went through little dips and little phases where I just wasn't myself. But I managed to supplement that by way of food, to the point that I'd actually got up to 23.5 stone. I went down a drastic route and had a gastric bypass. But there is still an underlying mental health condition there that wasn't necessarily down to my body image. I lived in Jersey for 8 years. I moved there when I was 16 on my own. I just up and left. And whilst working in this retail store, I was working with a colleague, and she said, I've handed in my notice, I'm leaving. She said, I'm going to work for this bank. And I was like, bloody hell. I was like, you got a job in a bank? I was like really impressed. Could you get me a job there? I'd work in a call center. I'd do anything, I got interviewed, and I don't know how I even got an interview. As I left, I just thought, you just completely messed it up. You must have seemed like a bit of a beg for the job, because I didn't feel like I was worthy of it. And my phone started ringing, and I answered, and it was the lady who interviewed me. And she went, Michael, she said, we love you. We want you to have the job. Fast forward 8 years, I've dedicated to my craft. I've been given the top bonus ratings by CEOs and phone calls from CEOs. I've been taken to award ceremonies for top performance. I thought, where can I go in banking? I think by helping people, I help myself, and that's always stuck with me through life. And I thought, how can I do this in banking? And I thought, well, people management. And I found myself just climbing the ranks naturally, as we do in corporate jobs. Mm-hmm. So I progressed from area manager to a very senior management role, where I found myself in a position where I was completely out of my league. I was back to working on spreadsheets, away from people management, away from anything that I knew or cared about. And I felt like it was my first day, and I was being treated like I was fresh out of school, and that any skills or any knowledge that I'd picked up over those 13 years were just completely disregarded. And I was being spoken to like I was the new kid. But what I should have realized is that as a people leader or as a manager, that's not the way she at the time, my boss should have been speaking to me. And it got to the point I sat down at my desk and my phone was ringing, and my boss was working from home. And she was like, right, what are you doing today? What are you doing? And I started shaking and I was quivering and I didn't know what was going on. And I felt sick and I felt like I thought I was going to have a heart attack. And I ran out to the bathroom and I just broke down crying. And I went to walk back into the office and someone walked past me and she said, are you okay? And just that gesture of someone asking me how I was broke me down. Mm-hmm. And I just said, I can't do this anymore. I'm working in a very toxic environment. And I spoke to my old boss and she said, Michael, we'll take you back in a heartbeat. She said, you were great. You were brilliant here. We loved you. And I come back into the job and I thought, finally, I'm going to be happy again and I'll be back to my normal self. And I stepped back into that room and I looked around me and I was like, this is not what I want to do. I'm miserable. During this whole process of me kind of working through what I wanted and how I needed to get there, I created a well-being and mental health mentoring kind of program page on Facebook, because I thought what I've learned about myself and through my family's history of mental health can help other people. So sometimes going through mental health issues and having that breaking point can actually be a salvation to finding a way forward. So don't be scared of letting it out.
The page is called Health and Wellness Mentoring, just in case anyone wants to join.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a private group as well, so people can't just research who's in the group to see, and be nosy. So my friend Becky, I asked her if she would help be the admin of the group, and she found this amazing tool, which is like an anonymous suggestion box. So people, if they're going through an issue, can go into this anonymous box, write what problem they're having or what they're going through. We won't know who's put it in there, but we can then repost the actual post that was there and come together as a community to help talk about it.
Being able to drop underneath the layer of fears and wants and getting to that layer where there's peace is a lot more challenging when you have things like Twitter, for example, which in my view is the toilet of the internet. Yeah. Right? And so I think that with everything going on, the noise levels are higher. And perhaps this is why this subject is so prominent now, because you can't get to that peace layer so comfortably anymore.
Social media is getting into people's lives at a much younger age. Obviously, is quite, notably recently come to the forefront of a lot of young people's minds because it exacerbates that feeling of anxiety. So in this instance, I actually think it's a really good thing to hear that social media can be used when it's used nicely and properly to help people as well, because it does create a community.
People, when they want to try and sort out the mental health, will go and buy a self-help book, or will go and read a positive affirmation or a quote. Basically, the whole point of this group is that you can read a quote, you can watch a short clip and be inspired for 2 minutes and then go away from it and forget it 2 minutes later, or go to bed that night feeling good because you've read it, but then you go back to work the next day and everything's back to normal. If you want change, if you want to do something, you're going to have to be prepared to step outside your comfort zone and commit yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you.
Tom, what about you? How do you deal with things when things are tough? Do you have any coping mechanisms?
And I think it comes back to that point around mindfulness and around just being self-aware of what makes you happy, what doesn't make you happy. When you are feeling down, what's your recovery plan? How do you approach life, and how do you change? I think I feel almost lucky that I've had people around me that one have helped me through those hard times, but have also given me the tough love when I need it. That for me is the key to me being happy and me being successful at what I do, and also me enjoying what I do. And funny that Michael, you also talked about the workplace being the thing that tipped you over the edge in your case. I think I was in a job a few years ago where it was really stressful. And I think the key to it all for me is talking to people, and having an avenue to outlet. Michael, I've got a question to you. How do you think employers today handle mental health, and what do you think they should do differently in the future?
There are some employers that have kind of well-being champions in the workplace. But then there are some employers, especially in corporate world, where we all know there's a lot of box ticking going on. What I would say is it's not necessarily down to the employers. I would say this is down to each and everybody as a person on this planet, as an individual, to be aware of mental health. Not just if you're going through the problems, but to be open to the possibilities that someone that you're sat next to may be struggling. So if you're passing somebody in the street, don't be a complete knob. Don't flash your horns or stick your fingers up because they're walking like past you or overcut you or something in traffic. Somebody might be actually going through such a terrible time that you might just be the reason why it tips them over the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a mental and medical condition that people suffer with. And until you've been through it and experienced it, you can't explain it. For anybody that is struggling, you need to basically grab it by the balls here and say, look, I've got to admit I've got a problem. One thing I've learned, and I've had to really learn this is one of the biggest challenges that anyone going through mental health after a significant event in their life is forgiveness. I was cheated on. We tried a long distance relationship, didn't kind of work, and found out the whole time he'd been seeing somebody else and now they're engaged. And this whole time I was like, what? Yeah. And I was like raging on the inside. I held on to this for a few months and I was like, what the hell are you doing? You've got this rage building up. And what's he doing? He's planning to get married. And there's me sat inside trying to get to the bottom of it. Ben and Jerry's tub, was crying, watching films and having a little breakdown. Sounds
pretty good to me, the Ben and Jerry's part, I mean.
Partial to a bit of Ben and Jerry myself. That's the most valuable thing you can do, is to forgive. Yeah. I've cracked James up now, sorry.
Yeah, you got me there. Yeah.
The most important thing you can do is to forgive, and it's not for them, it's for you. Because if you're carrying around, and I'm sorry about my language, sometimes it just comes out, but if you're carrying around that shit, it's you that is carrying that around. It's you that's carrying around all that bottled up anger and hatred, and it turns and manifests into other things. And It's you that's having to look at yourself in the mirror every day and think, I'm not happy with what I'm seeing. So forgive it. Move on. You're not in control of it anymore. Let go of it. If things in your life aren't doing you any service, let go of them. Mm-hmm. And there's another little tip that I picked up a while ago, and to be honest, it became such a daily routine for me. Basically, when I'm washing myself and I'm washing off the soap suds, what I visualize, and visualization's a very important tool. I visualize negativity, and I visualize any negative energy that has picked up on my skin being washed off down the drain. And then when I leave the bathroom, that's flowed down the drain and it's gone.
I love that. That's great.
And it helps me sleep so much better. That's why I created a page, because there's so much out there and there's so much advice and tips and things. Yeah. And that's why we should explore all these different options instead of, and I know I'm not, obviously I work in the healthcare industry and I'm not against antidepressant medication when needed, because I was on them at one point. But I was at one stage so heavily dosed up that I was walking around like a zombie. So I wasn't progressing any further because I felt no emotion. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel happiness. I didn't feel like I had a meaning or a purpose. And the whole point of us, for me, the whole meaning of life is to find a goal for yourself and to have an aspiration to work towards. And if you don't know what that is, that's absolutely fine. Make that your goal.
Yeah. Agree. Michael, we'd love to talk to you much longer. We will have to wrap it up there, I'm afraid. But thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. And thank you for all the tips.
You're very, very welcome.
So much there to think about.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. It was great to hear your story. Thanks for sharing with us. And I think it's fantastic. Like you said, trying to have a purpose, but also help other people. I think we should all take that mental approach going forward.
Been great to chat to you both, and thank you for being so open about your own stories as well, because I think it just shows the world that it's important that people can open up safely.